All righty. Good morning again, or hello, or whenever. Good evening if you're. It's my morning. I don't know when you're watching this, but you obviously can't get enough because here we are, number 4, chapter 12, exploitation. And again, he has this section in quotes because again, that word exploitation is one of those kind of political words like living wage or fair, where it doesn't really have any meaning. It can mean whatever you want. And he's like, when we say that workers are being exploited, labor is being exploited, it just sounds bad. And it's not until you get into the details of what is actually going on that you can appreciate whether some sort of real exploitation, kind of like job discrimination, what actual form of it's actually taking place. But he starts out the chapter with question number 1 with two scenarios of what is actual exploitation. When we think of, okay, an employer exploiting their employees or exploiting the market, what does that mean? He says there's two scenarios. Number 1 is that means the idea that they're raising their prices beyond the actual cost. So they're exploiting us because it cost them just cost them $5 to produce something. They could sell it for 6 for a profit, but no, they're going to charge 10 or 8. And they're just going to artificially raise the price beyond the actual cost in order to make a big cush profit and go smoke $100 bills and swim in their money vaults. Or the other example is of exploiting is they could lower wages beyond the value of their employees. So again, they could be paying their employees more, but just in order to make a higher profit, they're going to artificially not pay them that much. And so that's the idea of exploitation. Those two things, they're raising prices beyond what the actual cost is, or they're lowering wages below what the value of the actual value of the employees. He said he says that is exploitation. He said, if I had to define it, that would be exploitation. But then he makes a very interesting turn. He goes, well, let's actually look at where that takes place. Like why or why not would firms in certain circumstances act in this way? Who would actually bother to do either of these forms of exploitation? And he says again, in the free market, those two things tend not to happen for long. He never says they don't happen, just like the job discrimination, arbitrary job discrimination with double standards does. He says it does happen, but in a free market, it's not going to happen. Because he says for two reasons. He says you're not going to raise the price artificially high just to have higher profits above the cost. The first thing I mentioned, he says, because if you do that, if you're making a huge profit, what you're doing is you're waving a big flag and saying, hey, this is a really profitable industry. Come compete against me. If I'm sitting there and again, I can make it for 5 and I'm charging 10 because I'm rich and greedy and exploitative, then somebody else in a free market is going to come and compete with me. They're going to make it for 5 and they're going to sell it for 6, or they're going to sell it for 7. They're going to sell it for 8. And so if I'm artificially raising my price, someone else is going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to make that too. And I'm going to undercut you so I can make even more. And so again, that's not going to last very long. I can't exploit the market very long in that way because competition is going to come in and regulate that away from me. Secondly, I'm not going to underpay my employees in order to just artificially have my riches, is because for the same idea, someone's going to come in and I'm going to lose those employees to competition. If I'm not paying them what they're worth, somebody else is going to come in and say, well, I'll pay you more than that because I know what you're worth and what your productivity is and what I can get out of you for my firm. And so I'm going to lose those employees. So I can't, again, for a long time, exploit my workers in that way because I'm going to lose them in the competition for employees. And so in both cases, in a free market, and again, sounding like a broken record, but again, it's hopefully you're beginning to see these principles are pretty simple. We just don't take time to think about them, and they're made politically and they're made uninformed, and we act on emotions and intentions versus how simple it is. And the power of a free market, that all it is what regulates a free market? Competition. That if you allow firms to compete, so many of the problems that we face take care of themselves over time. And just leave it alone. Laissez-faire, hands off. In a lot of cases, and again, it's not a total argument against regulation. We talked about safety laws and those sorts of things, and potential monopolies and things like that. But in general, in a free market, competition is going to take care of this idea of exploitation because it can't last long where you're overcharging people because somebody will come in and undercut you and take away your business, or underpaying your employees because again, somebody will overcut you and come in and take your employees by paying them more. So competition regulates this. And so he says, where will this actually take place? I've kind of answered this question in reverse. What I've just said is kind of what prevents exploitation, competition. But where it's going to take place is in monopolies. And again, because in a monopoly, there's limited competition. There's a barrier to new firms coming in and competing against you as somebody who's overcharging everybody or underpaying your employees. And so no one else can come in and give your employees other options or give your buyers other options. And so he says the issue here would be a monopoly, where again you don't face that competition and that pressure to stop exploiting people. And he said that's the norm throughout history. Throughout history, the norm is monopoly, whether it's, and usually in the form of a government monopoly, of a king or a government giving business, giving their favor, giving their permission to only a select few number of groups, usually their favorites, um, and that they then had control of that industry, and they could exploit people in both of the ways described in question one because there was no intervention. This is one of the, I mean, just take a broad moment, look at this historically. The historical reality of the human race is monopoly, is the lack of competition, is the lack of a free market, is the lack of people being able to come in and set these things according to the hand of competition and self-interest. The big revelation of capitalism in the 1700s and in 1800s was, hey, you know what? Get the government out of the way. Get the monopolies out of the way. Again, we've painted our modern idea. They paint the monopolies as these private firms, these rich Rockefellers and these powerful Carnegies. But in a free market, competition is going to rise up and prevent this exploitation. The real threat, and he says you will have monopolies or cartels in industries, but they just don't last long because people have too much self-interest to coordinate, and they want to compete, and they want to get what they can get, and that creates, again, a free market and competition. He says the one place where monopolies last, the one place where monopolies cannot be broken, is when they have the force of law behind them, when they have the force of the government behind them. Again, just the reason we shouldn't be, we can keep our eye on powerful tech industries like Google and Facebook, because they are powerful and they might seem like some sort of monopoly. But you know what? It's a free market, and people are going to find ways to compete against them, and they're going to have to adapt. They're going to have to change. The danger is where actually they were headed in recent months is getting government protection, getting government regulation. Because once government get involved, now there's the force of law, there's the gun that prevents. And again, this is what monarchs and pharaohs and Caesars and powerful governments throughout history have done. They limit the competition, and that is when a monopoly can stand. And it's in that circumstance that this whole fear of exploiting workers and overcharging things for more than they're worth, that's where it's going to happen. This whole idea that government's going to save us from monopolies and the government's going to save us from exploitation, it's completely logically, historically, factually backwards. I mean, it's a revelation if we take time to think about it, that this exploitation is only going to happen when the power of government is able to establish and cement these monopolies where, again, there's limited competition, new firms can't get in and compete and lower prices and raise wages, and there's no options for employees. So question 3, why is the concept of job security counterproductive to an economy? What is the result of mandated job security? So then this idea that, we shouldn't form of avoiding exploitation is connected to this idea of people should be secure in their jobs. They should know they have a job. They should know they don't, they're not going to lose their job, and that's going to allow them to work more freely and happily. And then maybe we even need to mandate this idea of job security, and that make it hard for people to be fired and make it hard for change to happen. And if we've been looking at the free market at all and the issues of supply and demand and meeting people's needs, meeting people's changing needs, that mindset, while sounds intends to be humane, is completely counterproductive, because meeting our needs, economic changes, is all about adaptation. It's all about flexibility. It's about innovation. How can we do it better? How can we do it different? Now all of a sudden we got coronavirus. We've got to shift our industries. You got the MyPillow guy making the machines. Sorry, it's escaping me. The helping people breathe. So he's switching his industry on the fly. Now all of a sudden people are going from physical storefronts to online storefronts. They've got to be flexible because economic situations change. And if we're the whole idea of job security, that we have to lock things down, that we have to keep people from being able to make quick changes, and that we want workers doing the same thing all the time, forever and ever. That's the exact opposite of being adaptable and flexible to meet new changes and new opportunities. We don't want workers doing the same thing forever and ever. That's the picture of the Middle Ages. That's the picture of the kind of the Stone Ages, where every father, every son, every grandfather did the same work in the same way. They had a very good job security in feudalism. You were guaranteed to have that job, and it was going to be the same for generations. We don't want that. That's not the prosperity. That's not the opportunity that has produced, our high standard of living today. And so job security is not what we want. We need jobs to change. We want to look for better ways. And yes, he says that can look like people losing their jobs. That can mean that looks like people having to go get new skills, and basically telling us, you know what, your old skill, your ability to just write on a chalkboard is disappearing. You better learn how to use Zoom. You better learn how to make these videos. As a teacher, I'm talking about, you've got to learn to adapt. And that adaptation is good. And even when you see job losses as a whole, usually when something comes in and disrupts that and basically destroys people's job security, it's creating new opportunities and new jobs. We just have to have the mindset of remaining flexible enough and adaptable enough to then go and seize those new opportunities, and not be stuck in the mindset of, no, I want the security to be doing the same thing in the same way for my entire lifetime. Tenure, you talk to anybody running a school, the whole idea of tenure, thinking of education now, that a teacher cannot be fired, a teacher has job for life, is an extremely dangerous, inefficient economic thing overall, because they can't allow that school to make changes. And it doesn't incentivize that teacher to change in any way, because now why should they change? They've learned how to do it. Their job is secure. What change, why should they bother investing the energy once that's been attained? There's a story going out about some public school teachers, backed up by the teachers union, that that the standards of their teaching and the expectations are going down, because their contract, what they signed up to do was to teach in a classroom. They didn't sign up to teach on a computer. They didn't sign up to do Zoom meetings. They didn't sign up to have to record themselves. And they have their labor union now backing them up, saying, you know what, you can't force us to do this. And you can't fire us for not doing it, because I had job security for what I was chosen to do. And so you can't fire me. And so you have teachers who are not doing any teaching. They're not helping their kids because of their job security. And so you have this gross inefficiency emerging, all in the name of job security. And it's extremely counterproductive to an economy that's trying to adapt, remain flexible, meet needs, and get scarce resources with alternative uses to as many people as possible. And he says basically the effects of this, the result of mandated job security, is high unemployment, because you're not going to hire people if you feel like you're going to be stuck with them. And you're not going to be able to make the changes necessary as the market changes, and you're just going to have grossly inefficient economies. You have again, going back, he talks about the teachers in the book, and also something that had been exposed to. You have in the public school teachers have very high job security. It's very hard to fire these teachers, and so you have inefficiencies in the public school system, where you have teachers who don't even teach. But it'd be more expensive to try to fire those teachers or to change those teachers in their jobs than to just pay their salary. And so they just pay their salary to do nothing, or to do some sort of basic clerical work or very minimal teaching, because it'd be more expensive to violate their job security. And so again, the results are high unemployment, because the risk of taking on those employees is too much and it's too expensive, and just gross inefficiencies in the economy or that industry. And so then question number 4, what is the benefit of occupational licensing? What is the drawback? So another aspect of this is, at the very close of the chapter, he looks at the idea that you need a license to do a certain job, to have a certain occupation. This idea of certificate, or your credential for a teacher, or your medical degree, or whatever it is. That's occupational licensing. Your taxi driver medallion, as he references. And he starts out by saying that there's a reason for this. This again had a good intention to begin with, and is necessary in many cases, because the benefit is that it protects the quality. That in certain industries, and that's the key, certain industries, you want to know your doctor has been to medical school. You want to know that he's educated. You want to know that there's a certain standard that he has met, or she has met. You want to know that, he says, that lawyers know the law, that they've passed the LSAT, that they actually know what they're talking about, and that you want to maintain these certain standards within an industry in order to protect the consumers. And so he says occupational licensing is beneficial. But again, in key industries. And he says that one of the real dangers, and again, even with like the idea of going back to working conditions, regulating safety and the externalities of working conditions is a job of the government, is an important job of the government. They have a role to play in the free market, and offering occupational licensing to certain industries is an important thing. But he says the problem is once you start that, if you don't watch it, it tends to spread. That government and regulation tends to spread, and that the offering of occupational licensing has greatly overexpanded into other industries that really the level of threat of somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or doesn't meet a certain standard is not the same. And what you're doing then is you're instead just imposing a barrier to people to get into that industry. And anytime you impose barriers, you make it harder for people to jump in and out of new jobs, you are decreasing competition and you're increasing the opportunity for exploitation. Going back to question number one, if it's not easy for people to come in and compete and undercut those who are overcharging or pay properly those who are being underpaid because there's these occupational licensing hurdles, then you are basically increasing the odds of exploitation. And then he points out that in a lot of industries, the number one supporters of occupational licensing are the ones who are already currently employed. The people who most favor regulation are the ones who are already in the industry. They want to be regulated. You might think, oh, I'm in this industry, I don't want regulation. No, you do, because it's regulation that's going to prevent competition for you. And if you can prevent competition, then you're basically getting rid of regulation, and you're going to be able to, again, live as a happy cow. You're going to be live hooked up to the matrix, and you no longer have to compete and survive. Compete in order to survive. And so he says occupational licensing in a lot of industries has become a form of protectionism and a form of creating monopolies. And again, remember, it's in monopolies, which I would argue are majority government or heavily government regulated private industries. That's where you're going to get exploitation, unnecessarily high prices, unnecessarily low wages. Because they don't want to face that the competition and what that entails. And actually, interestingly, with the huge job issue we're going through right now with the economy, that they're looking to remove a lot of occupational licensing because people are looking to change jobs. People are looking to be flexible. People are trying to adapt to a new real world situation, and the occupational licensing is inhibiting people from, taking on a new job, taking on a new career, getting into a new industry. And so, to the credit of the government and our leadership, they're saying, we need to remove some of this regulation in order to allow people to be more adaptable. In a way, to have more job security. In a way, you could look at job security, going back to question 3, as the ability to change and adapt jobs quickly without saying, well, I don't have a license for that. I don't have a degree for that. The less of that we have, wherever we decide, it really isn't necessary, the more strong, flexible, and adaptive our economy will be, which again makes everything better for the society as a whole. All right, exploitation. Let the competition come. Let people compete. It won't last long. Watch out for monopolies. Watch out for government that doesn't live in the real world and live by its own profits and losses, and doesn't spend its own money. And watch out for anybody who says they want regulation. We got to really look at it and say, well, is that necessary? Because otherwise, the regulation meant to prevent exploitation could actually have the exact opposite effect. All right, congratulations. You made it through this week's readings.